Welcome, everybody. You've built a map.
We've been through 3 seasons of understanding mental health in the modern world.
Season 4 is building on the understanding.
This season, we're going to go domain by domain: work, home, digital, relationships, identity, and take a look at what it actually means to design the spaces that you're occupying.
Not optimize it, not discipline your way through it.
Create it,
Either you're designing your field.
or something else is.
Welcome to Roaming Mind Season 4.
We've talked a lot about predictive processing, or at least mentioned it on several different occasions, maybe not gone deep into it. But the premise of it is that we're just constantly predicting sensory inputs around us and responding to whether or not we predicted accurately or not, right? That's a very oversimplified version of it, but that's okay. For our specific purposes, that's really all we need to understand. It's very interesting to me that as we do a job more, it tends to wear us out more. Because you walk into work and you're like, yeah, man, I'm here to start this job and it's going to be great. And you go, you do it for, I don't know, a couple months, maybe 6 months, depending on what the job is. And then at some point, you're just done leaving work and you're just like, bleh. Maybe not disgusted, bleh, but just exhausted, bleh. I understand that was quite a confusing expression of emotions there, so I felt I had to specify. It's amazing to me. I can leave out of work being completely exhausted and honestly not having done all. Comparatively, it wasn't a particularly stressful day. It wasn't a day that I spent running around doing mass amounts of physical activity. I'm just like, I'm tired. And it's not like our typical energy expenditure that we tend to think about. Energy out. And so now I don't have energy coming in to be able to put any more out. I really have been thinking about that a good bit recently because I've been significantly more tired by Wednesday than previous. And so I guess it brings up this idea that it's not necessarily about the work. It doesn't, it's not always, let me rephrase that. It's not always tied
to the work.
Right. And so if it's not always tied to work, then really what is it that is bringing about that mental drain, that exhaustion that so many of us encounter on a regular basis? It really, I don't know. It fascinates me because, again, we're not doing anything that complicated. We're doing things that we've been doing for months at a time, for a sustained period of time, however long that is. Yet, it's still just exhausting.
But the theme of this season is we'll be discussing how your your field is shaped either by you or by default. So sometimes I think what happens is when you start a job, the field is shaped by you, like because you're like I just got this job. I need to do a good job at this job. So you are actively making choices, and then as time progresses, you get to know the job. So you get to slowly become the work. I want to use the word complacent, but it's not like complacent in the way we think of it. Like you just become, for lack of a better word, good at your job, and you can kind of do it on autopilot. So when that happens, the environment starts shaping what happens to you or how you feel about the job.
Yeah, it's definitely tied in with all of that. It's really interesting when we kind of sit back and think about it from a structural, emotional, relational, temporal, right? Time, social dynamics, sensory input, and routines, we get ingrained inside of routines that are super predictable that we don't have to really navigate. And there could be some aspect of like, I know this is jumping and I'm very sorry for that, but this is what I was trying to get to originally. When we first start a job, the focus is I have to learn how to do this job.
Well,
And so we overlook a lot of the things in the field. We overlook things, relational dynamics. How are those social hierarchies being played out at in the specific workplace environment? Sensory is easier to overlook unless it's blaring you in the face. I know I went for a job interview a little while ago, and I pulled up to the building and I was like, I don't want this job. Like, please don't. But that's not always the case. It's got to be bad in order
right.
for that to happen. And the routines that it's going to put you in, you're building those currently by when you first start. So we don't notice those things. We're not paying as much attention to them. And so then we get to, I don't know, what? I'll be generous. Let's say 6 months in. And the structural routines have begun to take place. You start to pay attention to the social hierarchies that are occurring at work. And you start paying more and more attention to the sensory input that's going on around you. Right? Maybe, I don't know, the building was okay at first because you really didn't notice the things, but then you start noticing paint's chipping off in certain small places, or it looks like the walls haven't been cleaned, and God only knows how. They could be anything. I'm just thinking about things that would literally drive me insane.
Yes.
Uh, and so it's really interesting because we have a tendency to fall into a couple of different places. A lot of us, we see a lot of this now as we fall into that optimizing pattern.
Yeah.
How can I structure my morning so that I'm more energized? How can I use productivity hacks to get more done? Those are great. I'm all about having solid morning routines. I've talked about them regularly. I'm all about having productive systems. However, if the problem is environmental, doesn't matter how good your morning routine is. It doesn't matter how good your productivity system is working out. It's not going anywhere. I always describe it like running at a brick wall. I see the brick wall, it's clear as day. I'm running straight at it, and I'm basically going to be the Kool-Aid man and bust through that wall.
Yeah.
That is a super annoying and not a great way of approaching that kind of problem, because it's working against you. Right? If you've ever busted through the brick wall, you know it's a pain in the ass. It hurts. It's not like jumping through a wall is not going to be pleasant no matter what. You add one that is specifically difficult, it's just going to hurt a little bit more. And yeah, you come out on the other side, but not without a few cuts, bruises, scrapes, and bumps along the way. So optimization, while wonderful, again, I'm all about optimizing. We can't address the issues that exist inside of our field, spatial influence field, however you want to say it. It's just, I'm not doing good enough.
Yeah. And I think what a lot of people get wrong is that they believe that optimization is like simply a matter of being more proficient or like getting things done efficaciously. But sometimes when the work around you is chaotic, we have other systems that kind of churn in. So then you start kind of adding the two systems at the same time. And I think just to go back a little bit, I think when we were talking about work, I think a lot of people, the repetitive nature also plays a huge role in the that monotony that we were kind of discussing, because that lack of stimulation. So that's why sometimes you'll be at work and then you'll leave work, and now you have a new stimulus in your life, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, you attribute that to being out of work, but it's just the lack of stimulation at work. And people do the same thing at home too. When you're home and you are not being stimulated because of the environment,
Hmm.
people be like, I hate being home, I don't want to go home. But because you're outside in the world, you have these stimulation cues coming in all over the place, whether you're, at a coffee shop, being with a friend, dinner, whatever, movies or whatever you're doing. You
Right.
have The brain is actively being stimulated, and when the brain is actively being stimulated, you feel different. You don't have the adenosine and all these other mechanical things that we're not gonna get into, that makes you feel tired and just bored, and then you feel unhappy, and then you attribute that to the environment as well.
So the only place that I think that you and I will disagree is that people tend to attribute it to the environment. I don't think we attribute it to the environment enough. Not saying that some people don't.
Yeah.
We Let me rephrase that. We understand this place might be the problem, but saying that place is the problem is just externalizing that responsibility.
Yes.
It's not looking at the specific elements of that place that is causing what it is that you are talking about. And effectively, it's just this understimulated brain that is just like, well, if my goal is to sit here and optimize for conserving energy, well, let's just shut down and not obviously you're not shutting down
Shut down.
completely, but you're conserving as many resources as possible. And then it stays on that. Well, let's just conserve resources. And that is a problem. That's a significant problem. That's where you and I will 100% agree. I don't think that it's that we disagree. I just wanted to come in with that caveat of we externalize, and once we externalize that responsibility, it's over for us because we've lost the ability then to
Right.
go and do anything about it. Well, it's that problem, and I don't know what to do about that. Because what do you do about it? Like if your place is home, the place that you're supposed to be safe and uh what I don't know, that you're supposed to feel comfortable, supposed to feel excited about a place to just be you, and you
Yeah.
can't do
Do that.
that, that's problematic. And if
Yeah.
you don't know how to identify those things that are stopping you, again, I'm not stopping you, but whatever. But this is why that idea of optimization just won't
Yeah.
work. It's not you can optimize yourself all you want,
Yeah.
but you're not dealing with the environment. You're dealing
Yeah.
with the internals, which is great, but that's only a piece of the puzzle, and that piece of the puzzle is not what's currently needed to be addressed. This is a part of that. Oh, well, I tried this thing that somebody told me about and it didn't do anything. It's not that those productivity things don't work. It's that in that moment, it's not what your body needs. It's not what you're looking for emotionally, mentally. And so you're back to that optimization problem. I There's a whole bunch of noise coming in and I can't find the signal. Um and then yeah, go for it, please.
That's just, I think the trap of optimization is that it treats a structural or environmental issue as a personal problem or a personal failing on one. So when one begins to entirely focusing on how to optimize their own output in a structure, then it becomes very hard, and then the system begins to work even harder against us. So that's why
Hmm.
sometimes when people will try optimizing, and they'll actually find it much harder because they're like, wait, I am actively doing all these things. It should be getting better. Why is it getting better? But because you don't understand that there is a structural or environmental component attached to it as well, because it's the famous saying, there's three sides to every story: your side, their side, and then the truth. So there's three sides to this. There's the environment, the personal as well, and then the structural as well. So all three have to be working in cahoots in order for you to truly be optimizing.
Yes, I agree. If they're not all working together in an appropriate manner, you see degradation in some area, right? That's not to say that just because you go to you have searching for some way to optimize your work environment, that you are being affected by structural, sensory, and social dynamics. It could be just one. It could be a fraction of just one. And that kind of decides, where your tolerance level is for work. Typically, if everything bottoms out, that's when we see that, no, thank you, I'm not doing this anymore. But we talked about two traps. So other than optimization, we also have the flip side of resignation. That's just how this is going to be. I'm just going to go to work for the next 40 years and I just have to do it because I have to make money.
This
We're
is
all
this,
running around
this is
tired.
how it's supposed to be. This is how it's always the idea of, well, everybody else feels this way. This is how it is. I just
Right.
gotta put up with it until
Yeah.
I retire or I
Mhm.
go to the other side.
Right. Let me figure out a way to adapt me to what is going on. And I'm not saying that that's the worst thing in the world, but it doesn't always work out that well. It's not like just because I try to adapt myself to the specific environment, does that mean that I'm going to be successful in doing that? Especially depending, again, on how intense any one of those aspects is. If I'm experiencing a little bit of displeasant sensory input, the chances of me needing to resign myself to anything or the chances of me being able to adapt are much, much higher. And that's fine. I don't think anybody's going to get bent out of shape or just, this is the worst from work environment that just is a little bit unpleasant. It's when we see that major unpleasantness. The routine itself is problematic. You're somebody who likes staying up from, I don't know, fucking noon to 3 in the morning or whatever. I don't even know how many hours. Oh, wait, but that seems noon to 3 or 2. I don't fucking know. You have a job that requires you to be up at 5:30 so that you could be there by 6. That's a problem. That's a structural problem that you're going to have to figure out. And adapting to that is not necessarily going to be an easy outcome. Yet we do this all the time. We see this regularly. People constantly try to adapt themselves to fields that don't fit them. And then what we see is much higher rates of ba-ba-da-ba. Carlos is like, I have no idea. What the hell are you
I don't
talking
know.
about?
Yeah, well, I don't know what the word is.
Burnout.
Oh, regardless, I thought it was going to be something else. That's why I was like, I was thinking about what I was like, wait.
What is this weirdo going on about?
I was like, oh, I was like, oh.
I know he's about to say something absurd. Uh, oh man. Just before I really go down into the ideas of burnout, the primary issues with those two traps are not that we can't figure them out. It's the way that we approach the problem. That is the only problem. We treat the environment as some sort of fixed scenario, but it's not.
I think the other thing is when we can, I think resignation has the problem with it is it's hard to identify that you've actually resigned, because you might not even be able to think about it, because when everybody around you is feeling the same way, it is sort of normalized. So when you fall into those traps, you don't even begin to think that you're really resigning to the field. So it almost becomes the norm. It becomes the baseline at which most people function. And you begin to fall into practical traps of accepting misery, being like, okay, well, again, going back to what I said earlier,
Hmm.
it is what it
Yeah.
is. This is just how it's supposed to be. When no, maybe, I don't know, maybe it is
Hmm.
supposed to be like that, but
Yeah.
maybe there is a different side to it at the end of the day that it can be better.
Right. And I will tell you, this is something that your generation is better at than previous generations, is understanding that specific aspect of it. Because call it spoiled, call it whatever. When it comes to shit that y'all don't want to do, a lot of times y'all just don't fucking do it. And that's what I'm saying. It's getting even worse. No, I shouldn't say worse, but it's becoming more and more pronounced as you go down generations. They just have zero fucking time or patience for it. They're like, no, why the fuck would I do that? No thanks. And I don't know that that's. I'm not advocating
No, well, that's
for
what
that
going back
specifically.
is, it's not, it may not be necessarily the right attitude, but it is an attitude.
Right. And hopefully the reframe that we have will kind of check put that into a little bit of perspective. So if we come back to this idea of burnout being a problem of the field and not necessarily a product of overwork, because let's be real, I most of the time when I burn out, it's not because I can do a ton of work. It's typically because I've been doing something for so long that I really didn't want to be doing in the first place. So it betrays that idea of personalized mental health that we started all of this with. I know me, and this is kind of how I operate. But when I go here, I have to operate in such a capacity that it completely betrays who it is that I am, causing me to work much, much harder internally,
Yeah.
which then ends up going through to burnout. And this stuff is increasing more and more. It's easy to see inside of a work environment. Our structural aspects are crazy. How
Well,
many
yeah.
of us go from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting without any sort of break time?
No, but
A decent amount.
let's just go back to back, and there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Huh, what happened at that first meeting? That
Mm-hmm.
second meeting? And
Right.
I have been in meetings before, but I just get out of it. I don't know what happened. I was just there for an hour. Could not tell me exactly what happened. No
Right.
clue.
Yeah. Because there's no recovery time to process. And not what we don't always keep in mind is that everybody processes differently. It's not like you and I process information in the exact way, shape, or form. I have to intake the information, leave for a little bit, and think about it and process that out. If I don't, then I don't process the information and I don't intake it the way that I need to. That's problematic. Some people, they hear it and we can go on. Some people write it down. That makes sense to them. To me, that's too much. And I literally just have to go and be quiet and think about it for a little bit and figure out how it all correlates and whatever. A lot of us have output metrics that do not take into account cognitive load. They don't. Just
Yeah.
do more. We see this all the time in modern workplaces. Just keep outputting. This is literally the goal of optimization. Just keep outputting work. If I can keep producing work, it'll all be okay, and we'll just keep producing and keep producing and keep producing. And that shit, there's no way that's sustainable. That is a cognitive resources problem, which is involved at the structural level. And if the environment is producing that kind of, or if your environment is producing that expectation, that is problematic. There's no way around. You can't give something that you don't have. I would love to. I'd love to be like, yeah, dude, I just output for 8-10 hours and I got so much done. And usually I do get a lot done, but
Yes.
it's yeah, it if you're just constantly going and constantly using resources that you don't have available to you, that debt just accrues. And we think back to uh that cognitive stack, we're just building up that
Really,
that that debt. and need a way to come back down, but it's not there, and especially not in that kind of an environment. This one's probably my least favorite. And, I'm solely focused on those structural aspects. Hierarchies that require emotional performance, regardless of internal state. Politics plays a huge role in every single job that is going on. If you are operating inside of something that is constantly asking you to go, 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 to constantly output based off of things that you don't have, politics is the last thing on your mind. Oh, let me be nice to these people. Yeah, right. They're sitting up there doing dick, and I'm over here busting my... Come on, man. That's a joke.
It is a joke, but it is, unfortunately, it is reality, though.
I'm well aware that it's reality, but that's a problem.
Yeah.
No matter which way you want to spin it, right? And it doesn't. I don't think it has to. We'll get there. I don't think it has to be there, but it is a lot. I'm not saying politics don't have to be there. You have to be nice. You have to play the
Yeah.
game, but you don't have to overload people constantly to the point where they... there's a perfectly acceptable way of, I think back to the beginning days when we had Asher with us. Just to give some perspective, we had an intern who was working with software and was still in school and was like, I have 4 tests. Even with you, I have 4 tests this week. Like, what? I can't, we got to figure something. Sure, man, not a problem. Let's figure out the way to go. I'm not like, no, Carlos, let's figure out how to do it right now. Let's do this. No, you can't. I'm sorry. I don't care about your tests. You will fail. No, come on, man. To me, those are reasonable, acceptable constraints. I have 4 exams this week. I'm going to be spending the next 24 hours studying in a room. I don't think I can meet this week. Oh, yeah, sure. Okay. All right. Makes sense. Not, you sure you can't squeeze in an hour? We can't do this for 30 minutes. I can't add to your plate of things. Come on, man. That's crazy. And then on top of that, you better do that shit with a smile.
Yep.
Smile. That's crazy. That is insane. But we do it all the time. I know when I worked in warehouses, that's all it was. It didn't matter that you were working 50, 60 hour a week, 10-hour days, 6 days a week, whatever. Backbreaking work, lifting, bending, doing whatever. They expected you to do exactly what they asked, and you better do that shit with a smile. Yikes.
Terrible.
And then the environmental, I guess, is pretty self-explanatory. If you're a person who needs to be outside and you work in a room with no windows and you don't get outside, that's a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I know for me personally, I moved my desk from one side of the room to the other just because the other had windows and I can open them and I can get fresh air during the day, and I am infinitely happier than before. But before, and I literally just walked in, that's where the desk was, and I left it there for 2 years. So just to point out that really we default pretty easily. Those social dynamics are a bitch. You have to play nice with up top. You got to play nice with across. Every bit of your tone with every interaction must convey the appropriate. It's not even like there's a clear expectation.
Yeah.
It just has to contain the appropriate means of tone and respect. And every single person is different in that respect. Some people are like, and you can get away with a little bit more. Some people are like, and if you do not speak to me the way that I think you should be speaking to me. The world is going to end. And that shit's crazy. You think about how many micro decisions that requires in that moment, your cognitive resources just. And that's not necessarily going to be normal throughout anyway. But if you don't have any sort of clear expectations into how that goes on, and that's where that politics kind of becomes a problem, because politics leaves too many areas for ambiguity. You're not there. If there are no clear expectations, you're forced to play politics. You're forced to sit there and just play nice to everybody and hope to God that that's the right way. And it doesn't, your brand of doing it that way may not be what is conducive to the room. That's problematic, and it just adds, that stack just keeps going up
Go.
and
Yeah.
keeps going up. Time is pretty self-explanatory. All of this stuff happens over time. If our time schedules are thrown off because of early work times, late hours, just crazy structural routines, slowly over time, it's just going to degrade what little focus we have, and that's going to be how it is. It's slightly problematic, and then we'll figure it out from there. It's not, when we go and we work inside of any environment, whether that be home, whether that be work, or operate, I shouldn't say work inside, operate inside of an environment, that environment either gives something back or it just takes. If you've ever been in a friendship or any sort of relationship where it is just take, it is exhausting. And it is no different in a workplace situation.
Yeah.
Except in a workplace situation, it's much harder to leave. Oh, no, significantly. But if I got a friend that's taking too much, I'm just not talking to you anymore. I don't have to waste my time dicking around being like,
I see. I took it I understood it the other way, but yes, I see what you meant, which I agree with, if that makes sense.
What do you mean took it the other way?
I took it as in it's hard because to me it's easier to leave a work situation. If I'm not, I'll say fucking with this. I'm I'm gone. Personally, I think for at least for me, it's harder for personal relationship because work. I'm like, yeah, professional. Because here's the thing, I know myself. I know if I'm in a work situation, I'm doing the best. I'm doing my best. I am going to show up professionally. I am going to play the game how it's supposed to be played. I understand that. So if it's not working, I know it's not me. Ultimately, I know it's not me. It's either the people or the structure that they've put in place. And I'm cool with being like, obviously, I'll find another job before I leave, but I'll be making plans to find that job, and then I'll be like, it has been a great time. Thank you. I'm gone. With friendship, it's hard because yes, maybe I won't talk to you, but sometimes the problem is if you have a group of friends, that person is always going to be around somehow. So it's kind of hard to always
I get what you're saying.
remove the person.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm very good at ignoring people when I want to.
Oh no, I can ignore you, but if we share, like, if we share friends, and if I'm doing something and you always gonna be there, it's like, well, can't really ignore you for too long,
right? And I mean, I guess they're just different constraints for different, and that's a-okay. And so we've definitely kind of I hinted at this just a little bit when the desk example. I walked in there, and it's incredible to me how many people will try to get you to keep the same work design when you walk in there. So I guess I started at the current position a few years ago, and when I walked in, the tables were set up a certain way. My desk was in a certain spot, and for the first probably year and a half, at least the first year, I didn't even question that. I left it there. I didn't move any of it. The desk stayed where it was. It didn't matter that the desk was in a really stupid fucking position. My back was to the door, so if people came in, I couldn't see them, which is semi-problematic because I just can't greet them. Not any sort of weird thing. It's like hidden in the darkest corner of the
Yeah.
room, little things. And the tables were set up in a way that didn't maximize the space that we had and was difficult for interaction and didn't even think to challenge it. It's that's just one example. The list can go on and on and on. We can inherit ways of interacting with each other, right? That's a big one. You could be in a job that prioritizes email communication because you're relatively far, and when I say relatively far, 25, 30 feet, 5 feet away from another person, maybe at most 100, 125, whatever. But maybe you're not a person that likes email. Personally, I hate them. Why would I want to communicate through email? There's too many rules that center around email communication. And so I don't know which ones to follow at which point in time. And truthfully, if I have to learn more rules about an email, I'm going to lose my fucking mind. So I don't. I really, unless it's absolutely unless it is 100% required of me, I
Yeah.
will not send an email. I'm gonna walk my happy ass down the fucking hall and I'm gonna go talk to somebody. I don't care if it's 50 feet away. I don't care if it's 200 feet away. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care if it's 3 flights down. It is, to me, it's much easier to communicate in person than it is to go and try and figure out the email communication rules over asking somebody a trivial fucking question. And so thinking back on it and really looking at it, how many of those things did you actively choose? How much of it was just handed to you the second that you walked in? Are you adapting or are you trying to make it work for you? And I have this conversation with my son a lot. What do you want these things to look like, right? Because thinking about them now, right, it gives you at least some sort of an idea. And maybe we're not talking about like specifically, yes and no. Like we're talking more um, what kind of life do you want to live as you
Yeah.
start to get older? And having those things kind of set out helps you to be able to navigate those things. Most work environments tend not to be designed for you or the people that work there, but they're designed for output. If I work in a warehouse, one side is inbound, one side is outbound, and what exists in between is processing. That's not designed for a human being. That is designed
Yeah.
so that we can maximize productivity and output. And
Correct.
some aren't even designed for that. If you look at a classroom, in no way, shape, or form is a classroom designed to maximize output. You have 3 kids that sit close as fuck to the board. You've got 10 that are far and can't see anything. How is that optimized for output, student output, or student engagement? The board is so small that they can't see, but we know that if we immerse ourselves inside of things, that we tend to learn a whole lot better. But we don't have immersive classrooms. What immersive classrooms do we have?
You
Right.
don't, and also, why do they look? Because also, how do they look? What are the design? How much is it going to cost?
And so it's not a matter of designing the space for maximum output. It is a matter of, well, what is most cost effective and what have we done before? Let's just keep it the same, because what is the same is not being there's no risk in the same. It's not that there isn't any risk, it's just that there's no
No
need, or there's no
benefit? No benefit. Because we're talking about immersive classrooms and, having traditional classrooms because the way it's always been.
it's literally just that's how it's been, so we should just keep doing it that way. Because again, it's not causing that detriment. And I think we're starting to kind of see that maybe it is,
This,
especially with younger generations, I
this,
said, that are like,
these dumbass kids.
well, I'm just doing whatever the fuck I want, fuck your couch. And it's rampant, dude. I see it every day. but it it was designed a specific way. We haven't questioned it for God only knows how long, and we don't think about, well, maybe we need to redesign the environments with which they're in. I don't know, students get that shit the worst. Any of them. It doesn't matter if it's what age, we just constantly keep demanding output and more output. And especially with the sedentary lifestyle that we have, a lot of the kids don't have those same cognitive resources that they used to have. And so these things are problematic. So that's what it looks like when the work design is just kind of inherited. And I know I used some examples that weren't necessarily work, but they translate no matter which way we want to think about it. And we've all been in school, and when we are young, school is a part of our
Right.
job.
And I think when we realize our work environment or our field is poorly designed, the natural response is often to have a sense of helplessness, being like, oh, it's it's everything else. Like the structural forces are against me. Everything is chaotic. Everything is misaligned. Everything is against me, and it's easy to assume that nothing can really be done to really fix the system or overhaul that entire system. But it's actually not true because that thinking of all or nothing is in itself is a
Yeah.
trap again, going back to it. And you may not be able to redesign the whole field, but you have autonomy and authority to design and the defaults of how you go about living in those spaces.
Mm, I it is definitely I would agree with the fact that that is definitely a trap of thinking, well, I have no control anyway, so why would I bother? I can't change the system, so what am I gonna do about it? I've heard people say that quite a bit, and it's not. I think that if we sit back and we think about it for a few hours, not in one sitting, but we think about it gradually over time, we'll see that we actually have quite a bit more control over how those environments, how we can design small things in our environments that make it a little bit more tolerable. We talked about adapting, and I think when we talked about adapting, we were referring more to, oh, well, let me just conform to what it is that goes on. And that's not adapting, really. That is more conforming. And so while conforming is ugly, adapting yourself to the environment is actually possible and very beneficial. So if you think about it, there are certain ways that you can handle social interactions that can be more amenable to your way of doing things. I use the example of emails. Everybody likes to communicate with emails. I got people that are literally right next door to me that will send me an email asking me a question, and I'm like, "Why are you doing this? I
Yeah.
don't know. Stop. Please don't do that." But I get it. I understand because that's how they
Yeah.
do. That's all
And
right.
And I think the when you're trying to redesign the field is not to over promise or be like, I am going to be this negate person. I am going to tear down the system because you
Mhm.
by yourself can unilaterally just like, fix. I'm overhauling the system.
Mhm.
It
Right.
just it's not possible. Like you can try, but
Yeah.
basically you are going to be going back to the the brick. You are just going to be keep hitting brick road after the wall road, and then
Yeah, yeah.
ultimately all you're just going to do is give yourself a concussion and then pass out, and everybody's going to step right over you because
Right.
ultimately everybody's like, well, we told you like why you keep doing it.
Yeah.
So it's identifying specific pockets of finding areas that you can
Mhm.
actually leverage and focusing on those areas and then making those small introduction. Because I think going back to what we were talking about earlier, I think it's people going back to the all, and I think people go, I have to either accept it or I have to decimate the system. Both are not. Accepting it and just doing nothing about it is more possible and more doable, but trying
Mhm.
to decimate the system is not possible. The other one is unhealthy and the other one is impossible.
Mhm. Yeah, you're spot on. Those small meaningful changes for you will make a much bigger impact than you think, and it will make places more tolerable in the short term. It may not fix the entire problem. It may be that it is just so fundamentally against you. I forget who it was. I think it was, I want to say it was attributed to Jim Carrey or something like that, where he was like, depression is just your body's way of telling you that it's tired of playing the character with which you've been playing. So thinking about it from that kind of lens of you're playing a character that you've been playing for too long, making those small little shifts in your daily activities, whether that be, again, getting up and walking rather than sending an email, whether that be moving some things around to brighten up the space, or adding something, or taking something away. I know for a few years we had these huge TVs on all of our tables, or on a few of our tables, that do nothing. They literally did nothing. They were just there. We didn't use them. And for the life of me, I was like, why in the fuck are these here? And I kept trying to figure out ways of incorporating them and whatever else. And I was just like, this doesn't make sense. And so this year I took them all out. But again, it took 2 years for me to make these little decisions of, man, this is driving me crazy. And it doesn't drive me crazy anymore. Not because work got better, right? It didn't. But I'm not sitting there trying to make these decisions about things that don't matter anymore. I made the decision once. It's done. It's off the table. I don't have to worry about it anymore. I can move forward. So that one was sensory, but it's also structural. This is a structural setting that I'm inside of. Let me go ahead and mess around with all of that. And that actually removes some of that sensory input, so that, again, if we come back to the stack that's up here, and it takes a little bit off. Maybe not a lot, but at least it's a little, and I feel a little bit better. Cool. I literally told you I moved my desk from one side to the other. It's better.
Yeah.
It makes it this much more tolerable.
It's identifying those low stake stuff, those little things that ultimately nobody's going to find. Nobody above you is going to be like, sir, why are you doing that? Right. But they might ask you, but no, I like it here. It gives me, it allows me some fresh air. Ultimately, they're going to be like, you know what? A good bug. So we'll be like, I think that's fine. If that helps you, it helps the company or whatever institution you are part of, or as well. Again, I think you also with your email example, you do not want to sit there, click, 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 like you just take a minute walk. You actually also get a response faster, because sometimes you'll write an email and then now you're sitting there because you're like, I need the response in order for me to move on.
Right.
And and they're not ignoring your email on purpose. They're just, they have other tasks and other things they're doing at the same time. So, but if you go and interrupt their 2 minutes, they have given you a response. You have a response on whatever you wanted, or they have a response, and then everybody can move on, and then do the tasks that are appropriate without writing an email and then waiting, twiddling your thumb for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour before you get a response.
A day, 2 days. Yeah. No,
You've wasted like you wasted a day, you wasted hours, and then they're like, oh, by the way, we need this on Friday. You're like, well, I emailed you on Monday. Why are you waiting to get to me on Thursday? So now I have 24 hours to either redo this whole project or even to start it.
Yes. And I do also want to point out, because I know we've spent a lot of time talking about environments that we don't necessarily like in terms of work, and the same is possible if you do like your work environment. Even if you like it, paying attention to what it is. And I'm gonna hate to say this, but it kind of goes back to optimizing. But again, we're not just optimizing work. We're optimizing the environment that will fit us. And that, when we were talking about optimization before, different kind of optimizing. We were optimizing for the wrong thing rather than our thing. We were trying to optimize our internals in order to fix the outside, but that doesn't work that way, but we can optimize the outside to affect the inside. I guess we can go both ways. We can argue. Fuck. Damn, I hate those
No,
contradictions because we can optimize internal states, but only up to a certain point.
yeah,
It's impractical. If we want to go further, then we have to go and make that external jump as well. And so again, I just wanted to reiterate that like it can happen in a environment that you like versus one that you don't like. I know we spent a lot of time talking about emotionally draining workplaces, but it doesn't have to be the case. And if you get
yeah.
out ahead of it, you can probably save yourself from a lot of headache in the long term anyway. But and that's part of the problem is it takes a lot of effort in order to figure out exactly what it is that is draining you. It's hard to notice. We don't always pay attention to it, partially because we don't know what to focus on. We don't know what to pay attention to in those situations. Yes, I understand that sending emails sucks, but I don't know what the alternative is. Yeah, I understand that this placement is driving me a little bit crazy, but I'm not so certain what exactly the perfect placement is going to be. And so I'm going to sit there and play around with it. And when you're playing around, when you're already exhausted and beat down, trying to perform little minor science experiments as to, well, does this help me? Does this not help me? It's not. I'm not looking forward to doing that shit. I'm not like, fuck yeah, let's do this. I'm like, do I want to today? I don't. Maybe. Probably not. Um, um I think part of it also comes back to that idea of like when something goes wrong, we internalize it as something wrong with ourselves. I had a really long conversation with somebody about that this week. We are not broken people. I'm so sick of hearing that shit.
It's as
It's bullshit.
we are not broken people, but we feel broken
Of
people.
course it is,
And sometimes
because
how we feel determines how we view ourselves.
oh, of course, no, 100%. But there's a problem in there, and that's what I thought you were going to get at, and I was going to disagree super quickly. I was about to be like, no, um, no, you're right. A lot of the times, how we feel dictates uh, what it is we do, how we act, how we behave, because the way that we feel, a lot of the times, is the most important thing in the world to us. And that in and of itself is problematic because that means that our feelings are more important than what's going on out here. I'm not advocating for becoming a robot. I'm not advocating for logic only principles here. However, when we approach life in that way, the way that I feel on the inside is more important than everything else. That's when we tend to try and internalize a lot of those lessons and be like, oh, well, it must be my fault. What do I have to do in order to make it in this environment? And the answer sometimes is get the fuck out of that goddamn environment.
I mean, I was gonna say the other part is also how, how children are raised. When
Mm-hmm.
something happened, we go, "What happened? What happened? What did you do?" So if you go, "What did you do?"
Mm-hmm.
Well, you go, "I did." And sometimes as children, because you don't have necessarily the complexity of explaining a situation really well enough. So you said I went over and blah blah blah, and then I blah blah blah, and then they blah blah blah, and then so it becomes I and the other thing. So then when your parents, well, you or whoever's in charge of the adults, well, you shouldn't have done that, or why did you do that? Why did you think that way? Or what? So you then begin. Oh, there is, again, I'm not advocating saying that that is bad in and of it itself. Obviously, like, context matter, but sometimes as a child, you start to go, well, maybe I might be the problem,
Mm-hmm.
and if I'm the problem, then everything is my fault. even if it's not always true.
It is a very childish mentality, and I say that with absolutely no judgment or no negative context to it. It's just how we tend to think as kids, because that's really what we understand when we're growing up. We understand feelings. Separating logic from feelings as a child is much more difficult than when we get older. We see this with, what do they call it? They call it young love. It is very different from when you get older, because by the time you get older, you realize that none of that shit matters. Not that it doesn't matter, but the feelings fade. Let's just call it what it is. The way you felt that yesterday is not going to be the way that you feel today. And I'm not talking about that in relation to a person. I'm just talking about in general. Our feelings do not last forever. And so by the time you get older, you're like, oh, well, I really should have thought about this, and this, and then whatever outside the scope, but I'm just using that as the idea of the importance on feelings and identifying that from a very young perspective. Because when we are younger, that is what we tend to focus on, versus as we get kind of progress through life and we see, oh, maybe I should have done things a little differently. Whoops. You know, it's funny because we know that things operate differently in different environments, but we don't take that into account for ourselves.
Mhm.
We just sit there and say, "Oh, well, it's just our fault. I'm just not outputting enough." In spite of the fact of, I can come home and I can work on a Saturday morning. I can wake up at 6:30. I can start working by 7:30 or sooner, pretty easy and sleazy if I really need to, and sit down and work until 4:30, and then get up and cook for another 2-3 hours. Maybe not 3, but probably 2, realistically. That's not a capacity problem. If I can do that on one day, but I can't do that on a day that I'm going to work, that's not a me problem. That's an environment problem. There's no way around that. And again, it's not, I want to be careful, because I don't want to place blame on anything. It's not the problem of work. It's not the problem of that environment. They didn't do anything. They are structured in that way for a reason.
Yep, and I'll go back to a point that I made last week. Again, some people, that environment might be very, very conducive, and they might even
Hmm.
thrive in it.
Yeah.
So again, this is based on individual differences, and like for instance, in how we are able to work. We we're
Hmm.
what we are trying to get at is, there are many variation of environments that we encounter through our days, our life, like on every second. Ultimately, what we're trying to give you is or discuss about is the roads into identifying those fields, seeing how they're beneficial. If they're beneficial, keep at it, keep doing it. That's wonderful.
Hmm.
And if it's not, identifying what it is about the environment, and then making those, again, small structural changes in order for those environment to really ultimately benefit you and how you want to be and what you want to achieve in said environment.
Yes, I don't think I could have said that any better. It really is up to us at the end of the day. You just said it's not the responsibility of work. It's not to blame the environment. It's not to blame anything. If anything, I'm going to contradict myself again and say that we are to blame, but we can't be blamed because we were originally ignorant of it. So what the goal here is really to update frameworks, to update mental models, to be able to approach these problems. I don't like saying problems, but if you're at the point where
Situations.
if you're at the point where you're listening and you're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, chances are you got some problems. And so that's not to say that that's a bad thing. We all do it. Nobody gets out of life unscathed. I've said it once, I'll say it many, many times. But it is on us to go out and find those solutions once we develop that awareness of, and that is that is going to be key. It's never going to be about how hard you work. Very rarely have I ever met somebody who doesn't want to work hard at something that they want to do, or it's something that they are good at, or it's something that they, I guess what they want to do is good. But I don't like saying that because it makes it sound like we're a lot more selfish than we really are. And or at least what I'm trying to get at. What I really want to kind of make sure that we understand is just understanding these things, the habits and the routines with which we have inside of our work environments are they're modifiable to an extent, and we can work within those constraints in order to take care of that. We talked about that last season. We did a whole episode or two on constraints alone and how to navigate those. So habits and routines, modifying within constraints is super beneficial. Sensory things, some can't be done. I can't dictate how often they clean your work environment or to what extent they do clean it. I can't change the fact that it smells like horse shit if you work on a farm. It's just impossible. But if you are somebody who doesn't like the smell of horse shit and you work on a farm, chances are you're in the wrong place. It is on you to recognize that and respond accordingly.
You're getting used to the smell of portion. If you've been working on it for a while, that's
Maybe.
maybe on the first day it might be jarring and you just might need to get used to it. But if you say if you've worked there for 10 years and you've usually people get used to
I
as a
mean,
person who's working the medical, there are certain things you just go, well, it is what it is. Just gotta go. Did you just go,
yeah.
like it just there are certain things, certain jobs and certain professions come with certain territories.
Yeah. Mhm,
If
yeah.
you want to be a parent, when the kid is born, you're gonna have to change a diaper unless you are just uber wealthy and you have all the nannies and all the care in the world. There are just certain jobs come with certain responsibilities, and ultimately you can't skirt them by maybe you can in certain contexts, but
Mhm.
ultimately, no, because with the parenting, what if the nanny is sick? What if nobody, well, your kid is just going to sit in that dirty diaper until somebody comes in and does it for you? No, like certain things just, you just have to kind of get over yourself. Ultimately, you just got to do it.
Right. And I can honestly tell you that no, no, nope. Like I said, there's a reason why I knew I wasn't going into medical, and it's because every time I see blood or bone, I get queasy. That's not something I. That's not something that is going to fix me over time. If I think about it, dude, I can think about it and be like, "Ugh,
But
nope.
see, but here, that's the thing. You would recognize that you know what, not for me, and so
Right, right,
I'm gonna go down a different path. Me, I'm like, don't mind it. Don't mind it to begin with, and I've gotten used to it. So now, so I'm just like, another day, just what it is.
right." The relational stuff is harder because of the social norms and things like, or at least let me rephrase that. It's much harder for me. I don't know, like some people don't have as much of an issue with that, but if you're anything like me and find that shit to be incredibly challenging, I'm still working on that one. Let- Let's put it that way. And that's okay. But this is what I mean by agency. It's on me, and it's not
Yeah,
on the other people. And have I figured out the perfect way for myself or an example to kind of come back from that? No, but that doesn't mean that I'm not working on it. Time is time is more kind of baked in, but how you structure your time, you have somewhat of a control over. And so making sure that you set aside time to have some aspect of recovery after meetings in certain scenarios, all of those things is going to be beneficial. And so really that brings us to our wonderful reflection question.
yeah. I think it's by reclaiming. I think what we want you to get from today is reclaiming your own design authority, knowing that you have the power. That sounds so cliche, but you. Oh, nobody's going to do anything for you if you don't demand it, if you don't ask of it, or if you don't do it yourself. So it comes down to you. And when it comes to reshaping your experiences or your environment, asking what does your work feel look like? Do you actually have some kind of design authority, ultimate authority to be able to really get this thing going? Because if you don't, you may want to, change what's it called? Change where you're at.
Employment. Yeah. Yeah, right.
And where does the effort in your work field?
Our reflection prompt just boils down to taking a look at at a day of work, right? And looking at it through the lens with which we have provided, right? I, what habits do you have that are currently impacting you, and which ones are creating open decisions, or because those are really the big ones, right? We want to close open decisions as much as humanly possible. Shit's terrible for you because it exists as like that scratch in the back of your head that you're like, or itch that you can't scratch. There we go. What sensory things that are going on around you that you don't like, but that you're sitting there and tolerating anyway,
Mhm.
that you could do something about? What social dynamics are at play, and is there anything that you can do to mitigate those in any way, shape, or form? Whether that's just a blanket rule that you instill, everybody that I interact with, I'm going to keep the interactions to stupid short and just what I need. Maybe that's a thing. I don't know what the rule has to look like because I'm not you. I know what they have to look like for me. And what they have to look like for me is when it comes to dealing with certain people, I have to put the smile on and I have to deal with it for as short as humanly possible, because if not, I'm I'm not going to be able to keep up what I need to keep up. And then are there places that you're just bleeding time out, and you're just maybe not bleeding time out, but you're suffering from things in the temporal sphere? I hate saying it that way, but it really is along those lines. Are you not making enough time to recover from the work that you're doing? Are you taking time to reset your focus after specific tasks? Things like that. And then becoming aware of when and why that is happening, so that then you can begin to determine, oh, okay, well, maybe this isn't the best way for me to handle it. And if I do things this way, it will be okay to go ahead and do it that way. That's where we'll leave it for today.
You don't need to do anything with it right now.
Each episode this season will end with a question worth carrying.
Not an answer, just a place to look.
If this is your first time here, you're welcome to follow the show. New episodes drop weekly.
And if you want to go deeper, find us at theactive.com.
We'll be back next week.
Until then, notice what you're already designing your field.
And whether that's by choice.